Welcome to the West and North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
Tim, how goes it this fine, warm evening in Washington?
You know, it's hot. Where I am, I'm hoping the sweat beads aren't showing through on the video here. But yeah, I'm definitely a little warm. I'm definitely going to need some refreshments. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm luckily in the basement, so it's cooler than it is upstairs.
Lucky.
Um, but for all our non-Washingtonian listeners, I have to explain that it's like 80 degrees today, which for much of the rest of the country is not that big a deal. But for us here, we are wusses. And at most, we might see this warm of weather like 2 months out of the year.
Yeah, I mean, anytime it goes above 75, I'm starting to complain and sweat. So
Yeah, we really, and it's maybe it's global warming, maybe it's just the year La Nina or something, but we usually don't see this warm weather until after 4th of July. Like June's pretty gloomy and kind of muggy at worst, but yeah, it's never outright hot in June like this for very long, but it's hitting early and a little bit longer than I expect.
I know. I think both of us have seen sun today too. So
Yes, it's real sunshine. It's not the fake cloudy skies version that we usually get.
and you're going to go camping on the east side of the mountains this next weekend. So that's going to be
It seems like a mistake now. But, tents are perfectly made for this sort of weather. You get the extreme heat in the tent, and then you get the extreme cold in the tent. So, know where you want to be, but inside a tent. All right. Well, let's crack open some drinks here and get this ball rolling. I've got something different this week.
Oh, what do you got?
I finally went exploring and got something. This mainly was a can decision. I definitely judged this book by the cover.
I do love that.
But I don't even know if you're going to be able to see the art on this. This is the Rogue Colossal Claude. And it's got a badass dragon on there.
Oh, that's pretty rad.
So, for all of you just listening to the podcast, this is your reason for watching the YouTube version. So you can actually see our lovely beer art.
See badass dragons.
Yeah. It's a Imperial IPA as well, so it's right up my alley anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's your treated form, and that's a lovely sound, that crack,
isn't it? Oh, I love this too. They have a star on the back, and it's a lot like a soccer thing where you've got the different attributes, and it's shaded towards whatever the beer tastes like.
Oh, it was a little hard to read. What is it shaded towards on for our videos?
Hard to see on our video maybe. But we've got tropical a little bit, but it's mostly citrus and pine.
Ooh, I do like
with a little bit of bitter, but very little malt. So those are the 5 points of the star here.
Yeah, I wonder if that's an official thing. I don't know if there's if there's only 5 flavors of beer, and
I can't
you
imagine.
have to go in there. But yeah,
this is different. It's actually pretty good.
I like how surprised you are by that. It's actually pretty good.
Okay, so we drink a lot of IPAs on. Well, I do. I drink a lot of IPAs. You branch out a little bit more, but it seems like recently a lot of IPAs have been of the fruity, hazy variety, and this leans away from that and goes a little bit more hop forward, a little more bitter, not at all fruity, which I like as like an alternative to what the current trend is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've never actually been a fan of hazy IPAs. I know that's being counter to like what's cool with the kids these days, but I'm just old, and I'm like, if I want an IPA, I want it definitely like a piney, very like tastes like the Northwest. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to drink a tree.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm all for the pininess. This is piney, and I definitely taste the citrus and the bitter. Less the tropical. It says tropical on here, but by comparing to other like the Tropic Haze IPA is a very textbook hazy, and I like that one a lot, but it's very tropical. So this is the opposite of that.
Yeah, So the star is kind of right, but not fully correct.
Yeah, it's 75 IBU and 8.2%. So
Whew, there's the imperial part of it.
that's my sweet spot. That's a session beer.
Jesus. Not for me, my friend.
Compared to some of the barley wine type drinks I was having a couple weeks ago, or some of these more barrel aged things, this is on the light end of the scale.
Yeah, I have another beer that's in the fridge that I didn't pull out because it is an interesting beer, but I may pull it out next week. I'll save a can for it so I can talk about it for next week. That is,
Okay, all
we can
right,
have that an interesting discussion.
all right. I now that I can go to the store more and be on the lookout for good beers, I'm gonna try to change it up more. We'll see how it goes. I gotta not get in these ruts. What do you have this week?
Well, I've got like I've got a beer that I just spilled on my computer, and hopefully we're not going to short out.
Oh,
I think it'll be okay. It's not the
okay.
first time beer's been spilled on this computer. So I've got a Freem IPA. Freem is a nice Seattle brewery, has a bear on it, and it's just their basic IPA. This is not my first time with this beer, but I think it's the first time on the show with this beer, and I like it. As I said, it's a very northwesty, piney, just straightforward IPA.
Can you show off that bear? We really got to taunt the audio only listeners here.
Yeah, it's a nice. And the beer on it's amazing.
Yes,
Have you made it out to Freem yet?
I have
They've been
not.
around. Yeah, it's a nice little brewery, so I recommend heading out there. Oh wow, this is generally a little higher than I go, which is 6.8, which
All right,
packs a little bit. It packs a punch for me.
one and done for you.
No, probably not.
All right. Well, we like mixing up the beer, but I do want to say, since we're reaching what I would consider the slower part of the year for us on the podcast, we'd love to get your beer recommendations.
Oh yeah,
Write in beer questions. We can expand the beer section all you want. If you're interested, send us the notes. Let us know what you like, what you want to hear in this area of the show.
yeah, definitely. If you have a good beer recommendation, put it in the questions part of Facebook, Gmail, all the ways you can contact us. And I will go out of my way to try and find it. And I have a pretty good bottle shop up here that gets most of it. If it's from the Northwest, I can get it pretty much. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the caveat.
Yeah. So if you want to hear us review a beer that you like, or just recommend something that you really think we'd like, that would be awesome, and we'd love to get more listener input. Anyway, so let's move on to Tim's bit.
Yeah, so my Tim's bit is food related this time, which kind of makes sense with the Tim's bit. I just was kind of thinking about it as I was cooking dinner before the podcast today, and I was just wondering if Arsenal were a meal, how would you describe Arsenal? What type of meal would it be? What flavors would it have? Would it be a 3-course meal? Would it just be a simple pot noodle? Like how would you describe Arsenal as a meal?
Yeah, that's tough. They're like a dish that has gone cold. Like something that you would eat that would be great if it was hot, but it's kind of just okay when it's lukewarm. It's like melting ice cream or something.
Oh, melted ice cream. Sweet to the taste. Was good once, and now is just kind of mushy. Still good. I mean, still edible.
Yeah, but it's a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, it's like if you've ever been late for dinner, or late home for dinner, you've been caught up in something, and you get home, and your significant other, or roommate, or whoever has cooked dinner and just kind of left it out, and it's there. And you can it's like the ghost of a meal.
Yeah, like I love hot pizza. I love cold pizza, but somewhere in the middle, there's kind of just an okay pizza.
Oh, totally. Okay pizza. I think that would make a great shirt for Arsenal. Okay pizza.
Just okay pizza. Well, if somebody wants to design the OK Pizza t-shirt and somehow tie that into Arsenal.
If someone sends us a design, I will literally make shirts for it. So, yes.
I'm into it. All right. So, OK Pizza is the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't think I can improve on that. I think we got the show title too.
Yep. No doubt. All right. What do you think? I mean, can you outdo OK Pizza?
No, no, I can't outdo. I'm just going to move on because I think that is the perfect answer.
All right. Well, with that, then let's get into the episode for the week. So we spent last week talking about our final two games and talked a little bit about how the season ended. And this week we wanted to devote our time to kind of just wrapping up our overall thoughts and feelings after the season's over. Talk about where that has left us and where we go from here a little bit. And we don't want to get too far into transfers or anything like that this week. The transfer window opens next Wednesday, so the next episode will maybe get into that if some rumors start swirling that seem like there's some credibility. Because I know Tim, for one, is not for these rumors that aren't real because there's no pen to paper yet. So
Exactly. My heart's been broken far too many times. To...
so I know where Tim stands on that, but we will get to your transfer rumors and news next week and try to talk about it in a very sensible way because it can get very out of control. But I think we'll have a good idea of where the team is going, or at least some idea of some of the options out there for us a little bit closer to the transfer window. So hold on to those thoughts. This week, let's look back before we get going looking forward too much. So I was looking at the form of Arsenal, the performance chart that Transfermarkt has, and it's pretty much as I remember it. I think it's pretty clear that it was all downhill until Boxing Day, and then we were only able to get up to the OK Pizza level. So it's it left a lot to be desired. I think we can all agree on that. There was about as much bad as there was good, and that's maybe a little gracious, a little bit giving the team the benefit of the doubt. Because I could understand why there are some harsh critics when it comes to the way Arsenal has been for the past few seasons. Where does it leave you? What does it leave you feeling at the end of the season?
Well, when I was thinking about this question throughout the week, I thought back to our beginning of the season podcast where we kind of asked like what were our minimum goals for Arsenal, and the quick answer is my minimum goal, I think I stated, was absolute minimum qualifying for the Europa League and fighting for spots in the Champions League. That was just kind of like my minimum base of a good season.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great season, but or not even a good season. I think an acceptable season. Good season would be making the Champions League, and a great season would be winning, obviously. But seeing as we didn't even make the bare requirements of a passable season, I can't look back with anything without a little bit of disappointment
Mm-hmm.
in this last season. And I think that's not to say that there isn't positive things. And, you know, both you and I like to look at the glass full side of things as opposed to glass empty. But I mean, that after the first couple of games, that run until Boxing Day was just dreadful and just unacceptable in a lot of ways. And I think that's where the regrets are in the season. I think if you could have ground out a couple points when we were going through that bad time, we would have a better season. We would have finished ahead of Tottenham, for example. We would have we would have definitely made a Europa League, I think, if we just squeezed out a couple more points. Like it's so yeah. I mean, the quick answer is it's a disappointing season and not something I'm like terribly proud of, and will probably not really remember the season with fondness.
I'm just gonna read out the scores of the games up until the Chelsea game, which I think everybody agrees is the turning point for our season. But just to give you an idea of kind of what led to that poor run of form at the beginning of the year, things started out just peachy. you know, beating Fulham 3-0, I think left everybody feeling pretty optimistic about the season, even about Willian. He looked
Yeah, I was just gonna say, wasn't that Williams' like only good
he
game?
peaked right there, right at the beginning. And followed that up with a win against West Ham, which, looking back at how West Ham did this year, that's a good win. Uh, Losing Liverpool pretty early in the season, I don't think anybody's too surprised about that. 3-1 on that
Mm.
game.
Oh, I remember that
Yeah.
game.
But following it up with a win against Sheffield, uh, then losing 1-0 to Man City. So we've lost to Liverpool, we've lost to Man City. Okay. I guess if you're going to lose games, those are the ones maybe you can take a loss on. Then following that up with a loss to Leicester, and I think that was the one that really went. Things felt like it was going from bad to worse. Like it's okay to lose to Liverpool. It's okay to lose to Chelsea, or to Man City. It's never okay to lose to Chelsea, but it
Yeah.
happens. Um, but going up against Leicester, I think that was a winnable game, and Arsenal got caught sleeping. Like, they did not show up and do what needed to be done to see that game out, and let them get that typical Leicester City goal. I mean, it was on the counter. It was, I believe, later in the game on that one. I'm trying to recall that specific one, but I believe that was a later goal. But it was one of those ones. It was like it just it felt like it was winnable. It felt like Arsenal were in it, and it got taken away, and it was very frustrating. And then to follow that up, we end up beating Manchester United next week. Lots of ups and downs. It was very hard to feel confident and uh, steady by any means. But at that point, we're
Yeah.
sitting in 10th place, middle of the table, not the worst.
Sounds sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Uh, and then lose to Villa 3-0.
And it's and I think that game we felt worse at the time than what it was, which is Villa ended up being a mid-table team, which is, I mean, previous seasons they had been fighting off
Mm-hmm.
relegation, but even with them being a mid-table team, we shouldn't lose it to them 3-0 at all.
Yeah, so that's rough. Draw at Leeds, and then I think this was the game that I call, or maybe not this game. Actually, I think it was the second time we played Wolves, but lost lost to lost to Wolves 2-1. Um, Lost to Tottenham the game after that. Uh, Lost to Burnley. Think
That's another. I remember that game too, and that was just and that was that time when weren't scoring goals.
right. This was a 1-0 loss to Burnley. We're now sitting in 15th place. Um, and really wouldn't get out of that until the Chelsea turnaround. Tie with Southampton, lost to Everton, and then out of the blue, a 3-1 win against Chelsea. And Emile Smith Rowe starts that game, and I think everybody will tell you that is the turning point of the season, because the next week we're moving up again, getting into 13th, but there's a 5-game stretch there where Arsenal were hovering around the relegation zone, and I think there was major concerns that they would get worse before they got better. But luckily, it never dipped below that point. But I think that was it was a gut check for everybody on the team. It was a gut check for the fans. It was a difficult time to see where things were going to go. Whether this should have been the end for Arteta, I think there was concern that his time had run out in the busy holiday season. It didn't look like he had the team with him, and it's hard to it was hard to see the optimistic side of things at that point.
Yeah, and I can't wait to go to the positive side, which is going to be the second half of the season. I think we can spend some time there, but still dwelling in this misery. What do you think went wrong during that period? What was it that was just not working? Because it's not just personnel at that point. When you're losing to Burnley 1-0, we have a better team than Burnley, and I don't mean I'm hoping I'm not too patronizing to any Burnley fans listening, but we are a better team than Burnley on paper, and I think they would admit it. So, what was it? Why couldn't we beat those Burnleys? Why couldn't we do those games?
It's a tough question. I think if it was easy, then it would have been sorted out and it wouldn't have happened. But I think it was a mix of mentality. Like I think that there was a lack of belief. There was a lack of confidence. I think confidence was the thing that was missing in this team, especially when you're talking about scoring goals. You have to have confident players. Um, Aubameyang has not lit up the season, and I think coming off of last year where they were so reliant on him to make things happen from almost nothing, um, it was like they were out of good ideas from the beginning, or at least the ideas that Arteta was trying to convey eluded them to the point where it seemed like they were struggling to do the basic things. Um, but looking at how this rest of the season went, the things that you would, I think the creativity and the goal scoring are still issues, but defensively, the team figured things out. So I will give them that. Like at least on that side of the ball, they were solid through the latter half of the season and weren't like getting blown out of the water by teams for the most part, and really ended well as far as that goes. But throughout this whole season, I think just figuring out the way to um, move the ball into quality space and get the players that do score and do create, getting them into the right spots on the field has been a challenge. And then, yeah, I think finding how to best use Aubameyang, how to best use Lacazette, it never seemed like it clicked throughout the season. There were like one of them would be doing good and then the other, but never really getting this team going as far as goal scoring goes. And we relied pretty much entirely on Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Pepe to score our goals. So if none of them are doing it, which was a problem, that's where do you go? There really wasn't another place to look to.
Yeah, I think it's very important to note that Aubameyang just didn't have a good season this season, and I think we were very lucky that he had a good season last season, and we were so reliant on his goals, and that I think motivated us to give him that big contract was the fact of how dependent we were on Aubameyang to score goals, and I think now have seen a season where if he's not doing that, we don't have a lot of or especially in that early part of the season, we didn't have a lot of options. I think we started towards the end of the season figuring out ways to score, and as you said, with those three, Pepe at least started started playing by the end of the season,
Mm-hmm.
scoring goals. But I think just not being able to create and score goals, which sounds silly as an observation because obviously you have to score goals to win games, but not being able to do that was our biggest Achilles heels. I mean, losing to Burnley 1-0, I don't begrudge a goal on the defense if it's just one goal.
That shouldn't kill the team,
I
though, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
for me and for a lot of people who fell in love with Arsenal a decade or more ago, we have seen what Arsenal has been, what they could be, what they arguably should be as far as the style of play, um, the technical ability, the goal scoring that they should be doing on a regular basis. And we've seen that steadily decline since Wenger left. Um, I think Emery had a decent goal scoring season. I think his first season out, um, but was it really just awful as far as goal differential and being a leaky sieve on the other end. So Um, it was all the goal scoring in the world doesn't work unless you have a solid defense. That said, I think Arteta definitely has fixed that part of Arsenal's game, but the quality of player that we have is way off from the legends. Even the players we had like 5-6 years ago. I think there was more technical quality even in some of our second and third choice players than some of our first choice players right now. And that's not to say we have bad players. They're just not necessarily Arsenal players. We kind of just got players to fill in areas of need without really considering what is Arsenal trying to be. And I think that has been a problem since Wenger left. He had a very clear view of what Arsenal was and should be and the types of players that would work with what he wanted to do. And he was able to go out and recruit fairly well. I mean, I think everybody would say there's questionable signings under him, but it's been even worse since then. I mean, I'd be grateful for some questionable Wenger signings right now. But
I mean, we should get some more
yeah, I'd
midfielders,
rather
right?
be stacked in midfield like we were, because that's really the engine room. You know, I think that he had that right in that you need the way to drive this team forward, the way to open things up on both ends was to have a strong midfield that can control games. That has not been the case for a while, and it seems to be a balance that we're trying to figure out. You've got Party in there now, and I think that his signing was important in just admitting that that was an area of need and spending money on it. That's important. Whether he's the right guy is to be seen. I think he's had a, a little bit of a rough go. I wouldn't say he's been bad, but I wouldn't say we've seen the best of Party. But I think we identified an issue and went out and tried to fix it, and I think that is an important um, bellwether of where we are and where we're going. And I hope that that continues in identifying areas of need and figuring it out and making the moves that need to be made.
Well, I mean, sticking with Party, that's interesting that you bring it up because I tend to actually stay away a lot from like, I don't know, Twitter and like general Arsenal fandom
Mm-hmm.
as a whole. I stick to kind of like a few trusted sources and what I see with my own eyes type of thing, especially before a podcast. And my opinion of the Party was like he was fine, he was great, he was all right. Like, and I was he was definitely on my plus side of things from the Arsenal season. Something I think he played better than he played bad. He had that injury spell, and I think he had one really bad game that I can remember. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but other than that, I thought he was all right. But then I've been seeing this randomly, this undercurrent of people talking about him not having a good season or being a disappointment as a signing, and I'm just wondering where does that come from for you? Like, do you think that's a fair assessment? Like, am I just
No,
crazy?
I think that that narrative has definitely cropped up in the tail end of this season, and I think it was people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was a big signing. He was somebody that everybody thought could come in and kind of right the midfield ship. Um, but I don't really blame him for the shortcomings of the team. You know, he definitely looked a little rougher at the latter half of the season than I expected him to. He came in and I was very impressed with his calmness on the ball. I thought he paired with Xhaka fairly well. I mean, we had what we had as far as the midfield, and Xhaka was the obvious partner to him as far as what they um, given the other options, it was Elneny didn't seem to work, Ceballos didn't seem to work. It was clear Xhaka was the best player we had available, and they worked fine together. Um, but I think some of the shine wore off with a lot of um, unforced errors, some stray passes, some questionable shot choices, things that
Yes.
um, maybe just took the shine off of him a little bit. But I think it's always when you have a new signing, you have these very high expectations that you kind of develop in your head of like, you look at the highlight reels of a player, and that's what you have in your mind about what this player is going to be for your team. But those highlight reels really cut out all those straight passes, all those wild shots, and so you get left with their best of the best. And so I think a lot of people are just coming down to earth on him and saying, "Oh, he's not going to be the one man fix for the midfield."
I mean, and for me, it's just kind of crazy because I think there's very few players in the world that are one man fix, and that I was excited to get him as a player. But I mean, let's be honest, like Messi's, the Ronaldos, those are players that can come in as a single player and just completely change the outlook of a team. And we'll see it a lot when we watch MLS games because of that's the quality of players that we have. We have a general base level of players, and when these very higher level players comes into a team, they can completely reshape it. But that's not how it works in Arsenal. And so I don't know. I think I worry that the fans and we as fans can get a little bit too quick to start judging and then start throwing these labels and putting people into binary. This player is great. This player is bad. And that's just kind of all there is as a player, you
I
know?
think the other narrative to come out of this season is the idea that we need to trust Arteta's process and that things will work out right in the long run. And I think through the difficult part of the season, it was difficult to see where the process was going. Um, you could chalk it up to intangibles, like, oh, they've fixed the culture, they're starting to turn some players over. And there's been some things said that there were some toxic players in the locker room for the first part of the season, and Arteta has said in as many words that those issues have been taken care of. And I think you can read between the lines and figure out which players, with the players that did leave, who might be the culprits as far as the disruptions in the locker room. But I think like the process is all encompassing and it is long term. I think that's the thing we keep coming back to on this podcast, in that maybe people look at the Chelsea situation and think, well, look what they're doing. Why do we have to wait so long? They just flip a switch and all of a sudden they're winning the Champions League. They get a new coach mid-season and all of a sudden everything's working out fine. Why can't we just fire Arteta and get those same sort of results?
You see
Right,
the transfer bill from last year. You're like, that's an easy answer.
That's kind of what I'm getting at is like the process. It doesn't happen overnight. No matter what coach you have, we have the players that we have, and it's very clear to me, just thinking about the players that we've had in the past versus the team that we have now. And we've had some pretty crap teams over the years. Like there were periods where it's like, oof, that lineup is just awful. Like back when we had Shamak and some other players, it's just yeah.
God,
So there's been some real crap teams, but I think like overall the level of expectation, and we were making the Champions League, but I think right now we have to look at the playing field and say, okay, well, everybody else figured out a lot of things, and the revolution is not going to happen overnight. The way to get back to that level is not one transfer window. It is not one player. It is going to be a lot of trial and error to get the mix right and to get the team moving in the right direction. So this idea that we would go out and pick up a party or somebody else and all of a sudden the team is fixed and they just slot in and everybody starts clicking, it just doesn't work that way. And I think the same can be said for a coach. You can't just slot in a new coach and expect everything to just click, especially when things have, when you've had a coach that is very different. I think you could look at Emery and Arteta and think that these guys have very little in common with how they're trying to approach the game and how they communicate and what they want to do overall. And so I think the course correction for a team this big is like steering a ship. You're turning by degrees over a long period of time to get to where you want to go, to start pointing in the right direction. So it's been just little things over time, but this sport is not one for impatient people. It people seem to want instant results, and it doesn't really work that way for most teams.
And I think you run a danger if you get too impatient and you start firing coaches. You start doing that death spiral that I've seen so many different clubs get into, and really you have to look at like the bigger issues. I mean, I think one of the big things I think we have to accept as fans of Arsenal is that the Premier League has fundamentally changed since our heyday. When we were winning the league, it was basically just us and Man U were the two big teams in the league, and then slowly money started getting invested, started changing a little bit, and it became, or I guess Liverpool could be included in that. Sorry, any Liverpool fans. But like it's changed now where there really is realistically 8 teams fighting for 4 spots, which was definitely not the case earlier on. And of those 8 teams, for sure 4 of them are spending more money than we are, and I would guess probably about 6 without looking at the number of spending.
But I don't know if the argument can be made that we're not spending money. I think you look at like what the transfers have been. There's been money spent.
I mean, there's been money spent, but I mean, statistically, you can do a very direct correlation between money and transfer window and placement in the Premier League. They've done studies on it. It is actually, unfortunately, a true. It's why modern football sucks in a lot of ways.
Right.
You can buy titles. That's why Man City's the top of the league. But my point more is that it's far more competitive than it was. Oh, shua! I just hit my computer while talking. This has been a very bad computer day.
You're just flinging the beer off of it. It's all good.
Yeah. Woo. But like, it's just a far more competitive league than it was 5 years ago, even. And I think that's a reality we have to really get to base with. That you just can't count on making Europe because that's going to be competitive. And the other side of it is like without that type of investment, you have to really invest in coaching, infrastructure, and patience. What you can't make up with dollar bills, you're going to have to make up with coaching, with just being patient and trusting the process. And I think that's, I don't know, it's in short supply because it sucks in the medium and the short term. I mean, this wasn't, as I said, a year I'm going to look back with fondness with.
That we've had a season and a half of weirdness without fans, with several depressed transfer windows. How much of this do you chalk up to that coronavirus aspect of things, and how much of this is the growing pains of a new coach, and where do those things meet in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think that you can chalk a lot of it up to this being a weird season and there's been no rest in soccer, in this whole soccer world for quite a bit. It's players going from being locked down for several months to going to playing nonstop, and including through this season and into the Euros, which I feel sad for the players playing the Euros because they're just getting no break. I think there's some of that. You could see definitely, I don't know if I can point out an Arsenal player, but in just general soccer, when I was watching it, you could see a lot of players just wearing out, being tired. So I think that's there. And yeah, without fans, I think that's always weird. It was a very interesting statistic that this year the away teams have won more games than any time in Premier League history or English soccer first division history. So there's like that by like 17 games. So like there's definitely the loss of home field advantage, which could play into some things. But I think you can't get around the fact that there was definitely some growing pains. I think there's been some questionable decisions by Arteta that, just goes down to learning. And I think the nice thing about Arteta is I think he's admitted it as much as anybody when he's made a mistake. And it was, I don't want to use the word risk, but it is the part of having a first time manager that we just have to accept is that they're going to make these mistakes. He hasn't significantly coached a significant team. So, but yeah, so I mean, I think it's a blend. I think it's a crutch to put it all on a weird season, but I think it's played a part in it, to be the short answer. The too long didn't read answer.
Right. Um, and there's one more, I think, narrative that has cropped up this season, and it is a kind of a funny one at its most conspiratorial level, but talking about how there is a bias or a cabal out to get Arsenal in the form of bad refereeing and bad VAR calls. Uh, it certainly played a role in how our season played out, especially considering, 2 point difference could have been a game changer as far as our end of season results. Uh, but like, how much of that plays a part in your mind as how this season went? Like, to me, I think a couple results going differently because of calls like that makes a huge difference. But what do you think?
Um, I'm definitely going to say that there were some really really bad calls. Do not get me wrong. I still talk about the Luis call once an episode, and I think I will till my grave. Like I think there's been some bad calls. I think there's some very substandard refereeing in the league. I think VAR is garbage, and that's across the board, whatever league you watch. Like, if you're a Sounders fan, you know what I'm talking about. And so there's that. I think that certain coaches can have certain effects, and certain teams do get better calls. That I think, back in the day when you had Sir Alex Ferguson, you definitely Fergie time was a real thing. I think Mourinho had a way of playing mind games with refs that would have influenced calls. I think at certain points, the way Arsenal plays means that certain referees won't give the calls that they probably should give. As far as being an evil cabal or like some sort of conspiracy theory, I don't think it cuts that way. I just don't see it. I watch a lot of soccer, and the what you can say is that there is often a lot of bad calls, and they all cut all ways. And at the end of the day, for me, if you can't get over one or two bad calls a game, and that's what it is, if you can't overcome that, like, you still don't deserve to win. Like, like uh, so that's just my opinion. Is like it gets frustrating in the moment, but I can't see a cabal. I wouldn't even understand where the why. It's not like Arsenal's been like winning the league for years and we need to take them down a peg. Like, I wouldn't, like, you would have to go deep down a rabbit hole to find a good excuse to why there'd be this cabal.
Right. Yeah, I don't buy that particular aspect of it, but I'm frustrated thinking back on how many games were decided and influenced heavily by these game or by these calls. So it is interesting to look back and think, well, the this call here and that call there go our way, and all of a sudden we're, you know, we could be in a Champions League spot. We were that close, a couple wins, and we were right in the mix. That's the frustrating part of it. But I think VAR and bad refereeing aside, you could look back at any season and point to instances where if things had gone our way or had gone a different way, our season would be very different overall. Little injuries, this or that. This entire sport is a game of very small margins, and if you can chip away at those, those issues, the things that you can control, that's how you find stability and fix the somewhat rut that we've been in. I think it's like those are things that I think Arteta is trying to identify and fix so that more often than not, those calls are going your way or they're not affecting you and your game plan and your psyche and all these things. Like there's lots of these little things that go wrong can definitely chip away at a team and make them play worse overall. Like these do have ripple effects and suspensions and injuries and all these things play significant roles in how a season plays out. It's part of the game. It's what we love it. We hate it. It's what keeps us entertained. If it all went perfectly, it would be boring to watch. So some of it you just have to take and understand that's what it is. It is what it is. But I think the way that Arteta finds stability, the way that this team gets itself back on the right track is by eliminating the things that are going against them that they have in their control. And that's finding ways to take control of games and to really dominate other teams so that these situations don't derail your season. Like the call against Louise doesn't matter if you find another goal in that game. That was it. It wasn't like we got blown out. It was one goal. And so, blowouts aside this season, there were several games that were one goal losses that could have been, a few points here and there. And that's the frustrating part when you look back. More to me than the bad calls is just the amount of games that we lost by a goal or just couldn't find a goal when we absolutely needed it. With the Europa League situation, this team has kind of let themselves down more than they've been let down by outside factors.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's also true that we watch more Arsenal games than any other team,
Mm-hmm.
and we are also watching those games with rose tinted glasses, or red and white tinted glasses, I should say.
Right.
And I think if you followed any team, when you talk to their supporters, they're always going to complain about the refs. I think there could be a valid argument for raising the standards of refereeing. Although if I read a really great book that had a section about what it takes to become a referee, and it's actually a really difficult physical thing to do, plus learning all the laws of the game. Plus, it turns out that most people don't like referees, so it's actually really hard to recruit people to be referees, especially with the abuse that they get, which I try and keep in mind after a game and take a breath and realize that it's a hard job and not everyone wants to do it and that sort of thing. But I just I don't see it as we're going through anything more difficult than any other team, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but at one point I was convinced by a friend of mine that refereeing's fun and it's a great way to make some side money. And so I took the refereeing course. I thought, hey, why not? I like this sport. I want to learn more about it. Why not get deeper in and see if this is actually as fun as he says? And I took the course and I did 2 games. And the second game, it was like a step up. It was, I think, middle school girls,
Mm-hmm.
and it was brutal. It was brutal. It was much faster pace, and I was just a line. I was just holding up a flag, calling out of bounds, calling corners. Not making heavy decisions by any means, but those girls are ruthless. Those parents are ruthless. That's not even like hardcore fans. That's just
Yeah.
it only gets worse from there.
Yeah.
And I was done. I was like, it's not, you can't pay me enough to do this. It's too stressful.
My first job when I was in high school was actually as a roller hockey referee for intramural roller hockey at the Y. So it was literally they didn't keep official score. It was like the lowest Jeopardy type of game, and I remember multiple times parents flipping out at me And I'm like, I'm just a
Yeah.
high school student, man. Like, this is my first job. I'm just making
Yeah.
sure the kids aren't hitting each other with sticks over their heads. And like, I had one coach I remember took all the extra goalie equipment and just started dumping it on the field for a call I made. And who knows? I probably made the wrong call, but like, so it is a tough job, and I get it. But we should have expectations on the other side of things. I think it is a professional job, and these are important decisions. But like, also we should also remember to take a breath and realize that like these are human beings trying to make the best call that they can.
Yeah, because what I'm really clamoring for to fix the refereeing situation is fans to get in there and be loud and be heard and influence the game in Arsenal's favor. Because I really do think some of those calls that were called against us might not have been had,
Mm-hmm.
or we could have calls go go against us because of opposing fans too. I mean, I like that element of things, but I also like how it feels like that it's like a check on the bad calls somehow. Like
Yeah,
it washes out a little bit more when you have fans involved.
yeah. And if you've read any like writings on that referees make after they're a referee, they'll never say, well, they're a referee, but after they're a referee, they will always say that like hearing the fans yelling at least plays a part in their decision making, even if it's like
How could it not?
unconscious. Yeah,
That's a lot. That's a lot of sound coming at you. It at least
exactly.
makes you think about things like maybe the way they're reacting is making me think maybe I got that run wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Just add that seed of doubt.
So yeah, hopefully next year we'll have more fans in the stadium safely, and it'll will start affecting things positively.
I hope so. Uh, I think there's one more aspect I want to talk about this season. One, and I think we'd be, we can talk about all the on-field stuff all we want, but we cannot forget the role that ownership has played, and the Super League, the European Super League, and that drama that played out just before the end of the season. Um, Now that we're all past it for the most part, I think there's still some um, legal issues that need to be sorted out, and punishments that will be doled out if at all. Who knows? A lot of this stuff just gets swept under the rug, or somebody pays some exorbitant fee and then it goes away. Um, but what does that leave you with at the end of all of it? Like I think there's just just fill me in on how you feel about it, I guess, at this point.
It's a really hard question for me because like I'm not a big fan of modern football in general. I'm not a big modern soccer fan. I don't not, and I know I've opined on this, and I probably have a more radical view than a lot of people about it, which is like I just don't like the way money is flooded in, da da da. And I think in a certain respect, I don't know if there is a good owner anymore.
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
actually when I was watching the Europa League, and you're talking Villarreal's owner. It's actually kind of cool. He's the owner of a tile company that's a local owner, and he invested smartly. I mean, yeah, he's a billionaire or whatever, but like, I mean, the town itself is only 50,000 people, but it's his hometown, and he invested his money into his favorite soccer team, and they won the Europa League and are going to be in the Champions League, and like they're doing it right, and that's the ideal setup as far as the rest of the world how it's set up. My my lingering question is, do we get better than the Cronkies? You know what I mean? Like, who would your ideal owner be? Because, or realistic owner, not ideal owner, but who would your realistic owner be? Because, like, you have to balance staying competitive with not being international war criminals, which the top three teams in the league are all international war criminals. Or not international. That's an exaggeration. Please don't sue us. But like they have very strong human rights issues, and at least the Cronkies don't? Question mark.
They're tied to Walmart, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
questionable human rights issues right there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, to answer your question, I don't know that there is a perfect owner. You're right. I mean, I think everybody's flawed to some degree, and I think more money, more problems, right? So, um, I think the flaws run deep. Um, but yeah, I go back and forth on the Cronkies and whether we'd be better off with somebody else. It's looking at like the Danny Oak thing and the uh, idea of new ownership is good in theory, just because it would shake things up. But when that settles, what are you left with? Sometimes it's better to deal with the devil and at least we know what we get out of the Cronkies, and it's stable. We're not for all the losses. There's no concern that Arsenal financially is going to fail. I think at the end of the day, they will figure out a way to keep the lights on. And I guess the frustrating part is the way that they go about doing that feels very cold and detached. And like when you're asking players to take pay cuts and firing people and taking loans out to keep things going, and you're worth billions of dollars, that's a problem. I think that's an optics problem. It's a PR problem. And they have not figured out their messaging. They've not figured out how to talk to fans. They have not done enough to make those decisions make sense. And I'm not saying they have to justify every financial decision that they have to, break the bank and dump a ton of money in and do poor deals just to. And I say poor deals, just like I don't want them to just go out and spend big transfer money just to do it. I think the thing that we as fans should understand by now is that you have to be smart with your money. You cannot just go spend on any old player and make it work. So I think if you're gonna care about sustainability, if you're gonna care about keeping this team afloat and taking it to the next level, you have to be smarter with how you spend the money that you do have. And that goes from who you hire at the top all the way down. And so I think that's the thing that they have to fix is all this investment needs to be done better and smarter. And I don't care who comes in and makes those investments. It just has to be done in a better way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I point out is at this point, as I said, like one owner is as good as the next if we're not going to be in like a wholly different world. But I
Mm.
think there's something that we can agitate for as fans, which is just more fan involvement in the running and the ownership of the club, and whatever that means. At least having fans have a voice and letting the ownership know that we are the reason the club exists. And I think if we can figure out some sort of ownership configuration, I mean, ideally it would be the Bundesliga model with a 50+1 fan ownership, but there's a lot of hurdles towards that. But just having some sort of fan involvement, having a seat on the board. I know that there's been a lot of talk of different clubs putting a fan seat on the board, which is run through the official fan supporters organizations and things like that, which could be a solution to it, and that sort of thing. Because I think that would be the most significant change that we could make to the ownership, more than whatever billionaire owns us next week.
Right. And I think at this point, there has to be an acknowledgement that the fans matter. It we have literally seen what happens if you play soccer in a bubble. And like if you play the game and there's nobody there to watch it, there's nobody there to support, it is an empty shell of what it should be. And fans matter. Fans matter with how the ticket sales, the concessions, um, the gear, all of this stuff matters to the bottom line. And so
And
to
not
to
just
go ahead.
sorry, just not just the bottom line though. It's also the soul and the spirit of the club. It's
Yes.
like fans matter because it's not just because we buy jerseys or we buy hot dogs at the stadium. Not, I don't even know if Arsenal has hot dogs, but that the fans are the heart and soul of the club, and if they're not there, it's just a bunch of people kicking the ball around.
Right. And I think like the thing that matters to the owners is not the heart and soul of the team. Like that's not speaking their language. They don't get that. But I mean, if you are talking about what they do care about, then at least appease the fans, because they are the ones that are going to make sure that your coffers are full. If that's what matters to you at the end of the day, if finding sustainability and even profit from this team matters to you, and that's your driving force over the heart and soul of the team, then give the fans what they want. Like, stop beating around the bush. Get the fans involved as much as possible, and stop holding them at arm's length. I think that is the problem. Is like they want the fans, but they want them over here, away from them, away from the team. Just watching and being involved from afar is exactly where they would like the Arsenal fans to be. And I think until you can figure out how to involve the fans on an intimate level, it's never going to really work and really gel. No matter how much money you pump into the team, it'll always feel like it's just fan service to some degree, and not in a way that not in a positive way, but more of a superficial. Here's your cookie, now go.
Yeah.
Like, just move on and leave us alone.
I mean, that's my biggest fear in this off season is that the Cronkies are just going to give us a big cookie or maybe even ice cream cake. Like just like some very big present that will go like, all right, here's your, big signing. Now forget about the whatchamacallit league, the Super League or whatever they're calling
Right.
it. And forget about all these bad things that have happened. You have your signing. And I think that unfortunately would appease a large section of the fan base. I think a lot of people are like, what have you done for me in the last 5 minutes type of thing. And so I think we really do need to hold on in a little bit of what happened with the Super League and like why we are angry, and remember that it's not just a one-time fix, or it's not just small gestures or even large fake gestures,
Mm-hmm.
that we should be holding out for something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I think it keeps coming back to this question of like, we care. Do you? Do you care about this team, this sport, this venture as something more than just a spreadsheet with dollars and cents? Like, it is important to us for more than just the sport. Runs deeper for so many more people, and it is part of our lives to a degree that I don't think has been acknowledged or even understood by ownership. And I don't think that for all these sports teams that they own, they don't really seem to understand fans at all.
Yeah.
And that runs across the board. Because I feel like one of the biggest sins you can commit in sports is to tear a team away from the fans that support them. And they did that in St. Louis by taking the Rams to LA. And we've seen that happen here with the Sonics. And like, the idea that the same owners that did that own Arsenal irks me. Like, it bothers me. I have a hard time rectifying that, but I try to compartmentalize and keep that was an NFL decision, not a Premier League decision. But any owner that is willing to do that for money, ultimately, they don't know what it means to be a fan. I don't think they can understand.
Yeah, I mean, at the very end of the day, they aren't. They're temporary. Like I always say, like players come and go, coaches come and go, and owners come and go. What's left is the club, And what we have to understand is that they're never going to care as much as we do. It's just it's definitely about keeping them honest and keeping them in check and hoping that they don't destroy your team.
I guess
because.
Going back to your question, what is the team? What is the owner that I would want to get? And that's somebody who cares as much as I do. And I don't know how many owners can devote that much time. How many billionaires have that much time to devote to a sports team? How many billionaire Arsenal fans there are out there? There's definitely, I mean, Danny Oak being one of them. There's some guy in Africa that keeps talking about wanting to buy the team. There are people out there with lots of money who care about this team probably more than the Cronkies. And I think if I were to choose, I would, as an experiment at least, want to know what it would be like to have owners that actually love this team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, I, but I think it is a nostalgic thing that, you know, it was a thing in the 30s, or like it's how football in England or soccer in England started, was with the business owners that like bought the teams for the workers to play in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had like the millionaire local business owner turn good running the team for their like own thing. And I think the Premier League has kind of outrun that. So now you're just looking at multinational billionaires for the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is the part of the Premier League that the more I discuss it, the more I'm like, I hate the Premier League and I hate soccer. Like, the more we start discussing about this high end finance part of it, it feels so gross and disgusting to me. Like, I try and pretend I don't understand it when I just go game to game, you know?
Yeah, but I do feel like the heart and soul of the sport survives even beyond that. Even with all the money that gets poured into it, the soul survives, and there's still some reason we would come back to this to to deal with the joy and the punishment. It's not like when you're in the moment, when you're watching the games, you're not thinking about the money, you're not thinking about all that stuff. That's kind of a byproduct that happens behind the scenes and then rears its ugly head once in a while. But at the end of the day, I think when you're watching a game and just trying to enjoy it, it that stuff falls away, and you can kind of spend 90 minutes not thinking about those things. That still exists no matter how much money gets poured into it.
You know, and I think the funny thing is, I think probably about 70 to 80% of the fans actually don't get this involved in ownership and the ideas of that.
Mm-hmm.
It really is kind of a smaller subset that are the much more invested fans.
Sure.
But it's why the Super League was an interesting example, because I think that was one thing that kind of crossed over the whole fandom,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone, even people who aren't, I mean, I bet you there's a whole section of the fan base that doesn't even know who owns Arsenal.
Right.
I would not be surprised if there's a large group of people that don't know the full ownership of Arsenal.
Sure.
But the having the Super League crossover where even average fans were upset about it, it shows you that there is, I don't know, some hope, I guess, for fans to be more involved.
Yeah. So we talked for a while. Do you want to talk about where we're headed, or do you want to save that for another day? What do you think?
Let's say for another day. We have a couple of we questioned fans, I guess, and there is one fan question. So let's hit up those
Sounds good.
before we sound off.
All right. So when we get back from the break, we asked you guys who your player of the season was and who you want to get the hell out of Arsenal in this off season. So when we come back, we'll talk about who you think should get out as quickly as possible. All right. So stick with us. We'll be back in a minute. All right. Welcome back from the break. And I just spit like crazy. That's how we're going to start this thing. We did a little impromptu survey of some of our fellow Arsenal fans. I can't talk. It's all falling apart. Our fellow Arsenal fans, and asked you guys who your player of the season was and which player you'd most like to see leave the team in this offseason. And I think it was a pretty clear-cut answer for both of those questions. The majority of you for the player of the season said Saka, which is not unexpected. Not too surprised there. I think most people would say that. I would not say that.
Ooh, interesting. Spicy.
The player, there was an honorable mention for Tierney in there as well. But the player that nobody mentioned that I would have put on this list and maybe put at the top of my list was Pepe.
Ooh, that is extremely spicy.
Yeah, because I love what Saka brings to the team. I love what he does. But in terms of shouldering this team, in terms of being a valuable player to this team, an MVP type player, Saka was great, but Pepe produced. Like, the numbers don't lie.
I mean, that's interesting, and I hope like I want you to elaborate a little bit more with two questions, which is that like the numbers don't lie, but in a way, Pepe is expected to be doing different things than Saka. I wouldn't
Yes.
say that Saka is a goal scorer where Pepe we're expecting goals, and that's where your numbers. I assume. What are the other numbers you'd
Well,
be?
they're playing the same positions though. There's if we're talking about does our midfield do it, does it produce goals? And with Pepe, you're looking at 10 goals. With Saka, you're looking at 5. Now, Saka does different things. I get that they play the game differently, but when it comes to production and what you got out of those two players, I'd say Pepe was the more um, improved this season, and put up the numbers to show it.
So I mean, and just because I'm going to be playing devil's advocate, and actually, I'm actually going to disagree a little bit with you on that, which
Okay.
I but I would say that Pepe, yeah, scored more goals, but I think, yeah, they played the same position, but they were asked to be doing different roles in the position, which I know
Are you
sounds
saying Saka was not asked to go out and score?
no, not in the same way that Pepe was. Pepe was, I think, playing much more of a true winger style, going in, going at players, and finishing the ball. That's his expectation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that Saka was asked to score goals? Are you saying that
Yeah,
that was his primary role as
I,
a midfielder, was to be a goal scoring midfielder?
yes, because I think if you're
Really?
if you're looking at if you're looking at who we put to set up guys, I would put Emil Smith Rowe and Odegaard above Saka. So I don't look at Saka as our primary setup player. I look at him to try to get on the end of balls and make things happen. Now, whether he sets other guys up more than scoring on his own, I think that was a part of his game that actually was lacking this season. His finishing was not there, and I don't blame him for that. But there was a lot of shots that or opportunities that did not go his way.
It's just funny because I, I wasn't expecting this debate, so I'm still trying to like process it. I'm a slower thinker than a lot of people. I just I think I could say you said the word Pepe was the most improved player, and I think I could get behind that. I think I could definitely say that like the last 7, 8 games of the season, I think Pepe was getting better and maybe among the best players on the team. I just can't say for a full season because you talk about like chances missed and opportunities missed. Pepe got a lot more than Saka, to be honest with it, and I think he missed a lot of those chances too up until like the last 7 games. Would you say?
Yeah.
Would you like before those last 7 games? Would you, if we didn't finish those last 7 games, there's another pandemic and the season stopped? Would Pepe even be in this conversation?
Well, actually, there's another aspect of this that I am leaving out as well, is that there is no uh, Saka is not on the score sheet when it comes to Europa League, where Pepe had 6 goals in that as well. So when you're looking at our Europa League campaign, Pepe carried it for us. So we're talking at 16 goals,
It's
16 goals
goals.
between the two competitions to to Saka's 5.
I'm just
And so when
I'm
you're
not
talking about our season where we needed goals, Pepe's our guy.
I'm just not buying that the goals are the end all and be all of the explanation of the player. And as I understand that they play in similar positions, Pepe or Saka does a lot more different midfield work. It's just a different role because like Saka tracks back and does his defensive work far more than Pepe does.
But that's where Pepe's improvement comes in, because I think by the end of the season, even he was doing that better.
As better
Not
than
better than
Saka?
Saka necessarily,
No,
but better than the Pepe we saw last season. And
I
I
mean, I
think
mean,
he had the offensive production to balance that out. I think, to me, that says, I don't know. I just feel like that is a player that should be in more discussions as our player of the season, and he's not even being talked about.
I will buy that. I will 100% go with you on that. That I think most improved player, I will 100% go with Pepe. I think last 7 games, he may have been the best player on the team. He's a player that I'm super excited to see if he can carry his form through next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to pivot this conversation to if Pepe is better than Saka, I'm going to say that Tierney had a better season than Pepe, 100%. It was far more consistent, had his injury, but other than his injury, maybe one. I'm trying to think back of any really bad games. I think there was one in there, but other than that, I think if you're talking about a full season, from when did we start again? August. These months blend together.
Yeah, it was a weird start time too. I think it was
Summerish,
August.
from
Yeah.
summerish to summerish. For the full season, I'm going to say Tierney is much more consistent and would probably be a better, more likely shout for player of the season than Pepe in my book.
I do like Tierney, but I don't know if I'd put him as player of the season. Like I would like just looking at our defense. I think he's obviously our best player. I can't think of anybody who's even performed as consistently on the defense. I don't know anybody who got as much playing time. I mean, he just plays all the time. Like we just had nobody else to play that position other than Cedric. So it was all Tierney all the time as long as he was available. So yeah, I think defensively, Tierney wins the award. But yeah, I just feel I don't hate Saka. It make it sound like I dislike Saka or something. I just feel like everybody's so excited about this 19-year-old who's come into his own, and it's great. It's a great thing to have a player to be excited about. But I find it almost more exciting that we spent $72 million on a player or pounds or whatever we spent on him. And this season, I finally saw glimpses of that valuation or why we would spend that much money on that player. And when you're looking at a team that just was not finding ways to score, and I get like 4 goals in the last couple games definitely inflated his numbers, but Europa League was really just on the back of Pepe. He was scoring beautiful goals on that. So
I mean,
I don't know. I just feel like that he is not getting enough credit in the conversation about what an impact player he was this year, and especially if you're talking about improvement over previous seasons. I think Arteta has found a way to get the best out of him at this point.
Yeah, and I do 100% agree with you that he's been kind of under talked this last bit, that like what he's contributed to the team this year has been a positive contribution. He's going better, and I really am looking forward to the fact that I think he is kind of hitting his stride right now. And it's almost like the end of the season came too early for him. If he I think he could have kept this streak going for a couple more games. I think it might be a little bit of an exaggeration to say he carried the team through the Europa League. I think there are a lot of other contributors to that, and I have a hard time saying the player that scores the most goals is the better player and the more contributive player.
6 goals and 4 assists. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not nothing. There's only so many goals that we got in Europa League.
It's not nothing, but I do have a hard time like just making that the quantification of it. But I am 100% willing to see that I think I'm definitely going to willing to say he had a good season. I think that's in my mind an easy call to make, and yeah, I just have a hard time, and I want to acknowledge that Saka. I keep on doing it, but I want to acknowledge that Saka also had a great season. Like,
yes,
and he played a great. And we talk about the turnaround. It wasn't putting Pepe in the team that helped turn the season around. When we talk about that Chelsea turnaround,
yeah,
it was Smith Rowe and Saka coming in and getting those starting minutes that really turned the season around.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where you can start making the call for maybe it is Saka as player of the season. Although it's kind of weird to have these type of things because it's a team game as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different metrics you can use.
I'm going to throw one more aspect into this for my Pepe vote. Also in the Europa League best 11. So
Yeah.
just throwing that out there. Best
okay.
11 in all Europa League.
If he only scored a goal in that last game.
If only our team could score and we needed them to.
Yeah, I mean, and I would love to hear other like people's response to this. Like this is kind of like a spicy take that I'd love to continue discussion with other people because it's definitely blown my mind, and I might have a different opinion in a day or two when I kind of chew it over in my head.
Yeah,
he was definitely not on my radar as player of the season.
Yeah, I surprised even myself. But I just looked at those numbers and I was like, wait a second. Why Saka's getting all the love, but what about this guy? Why not?
Well, was
Why
he the
not
lead
him?
goal scorer? I don't have the stats up. I mean, he wasn't the lead goal scorer for the team, was he?
Let me pull that up here.
I mean, all competitions he might if you include the Europa League.
Lacazette at 13. Yeah. For the Premier League, Lacazette had 3 in Europa League.
So going by your metrics, then Lacazette is player of the season, right?
No, but going by my metrics, they're tied because Lacazette had 16 and Pepe had 16.
So would you say that they're both a player of the season tied?
No, because I think my expectations for goal scorers, your striker should be scoring that many. I think from our midfield, we had nothing. Like nobody else is scoring at that level. So I think we need, like, as far as what this team needs, I expect Lacazette, I expect Aubameyang to put up double digits. Pepe, when nobody else is scoring in the midfield, that is absolutely what this team needs.
Nah, I mean, but I expect Pepe to be putting in goals.
Yeah, but he's doing what we like. What we need him to do. Like, I can't say this. Like, nobody else is producing at that level in the midfield. Like, not even close. So, like, I get that. I get that Saka is doing great things. I get that he is making strides, but that side of his game is not there yet. It's not even close to that. And I expect he will get there. I expect he will be a goal scorer and be a good creator. But that, like, it is not something I would even. I don't know. It's like you can't just be a good dribbler and not have the end product. I think he has the potential to be that.
I disagree with that.
But you could dribble into the corner and make nothing of it. Like it only works if you can find a way to make that into something, whether that's an assist or a goal. It has to turn into something.
I love this because I think this is the biggest disagreement we've had on the podcast. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a disagreement we can't fully do because I can't buy that goal scoring is the end all and be all in the statistic.
No, but I'm not saying just goal scoring. I'm saying goals, assists, like dribbles are not the end. It's like he can do a lot of things, and I get that there are intangibles that don't show up on a score sheet. And I get that.
What?
I get, like, I love Odegaard. He didn't do barely anything on the score sheet. He had like 1 goal, but I expect different things from him even than I expect from Saka. I expect Saka to be more of a creative force as far as he's gonna make things happen for himself and he's gonna make things happen for the people around him. I get that not every dribble, not everything is gonna turn into something, but I just feel like he is all potential right now. He is all about this thing that people are like, oh my gosh, look, he made it from the academy and now he's playing in the first team and he's doing really great. And that's where it ends. That's it. He's doing really great. I'm all for that, but I just don't know that you can throw the team on his back and say this season would not have happened without Saka. it
I think you 100% can, because we go back
but no,
again to
because you're
what
looking at
changed.
Emile Smith Rowe and you're looking at Odegaard, you're looking at all these people that played around him. He's not the only person that did that. Whereas
But
it's an individual effort. Pepe was always going at it by himself. He didn't need
yeah,
anybody.
but did he carry the team? Like,
No, but I
when
mean,
you
you
look
can't.
back at, yeah,
At the end of
yeah,
the day,
but no,
nobody did. Nobody carried the team. That's not what the award is for.
yeah, for it kind of is though. Like, who
But
made the
Saka
biggest
didn't do
effect on the
more to
team?
carry the team than Pepe did.
Yeah, I would say that Pepe had a big end of the season, but he didn't. What was? I mean, like, we can talk about the Europa League. I'm going to chop that aside for a
Okay.
second, right? Because I think these are two separate discussions, and this is getting a little heated. Like, ooh, it might be the hot weather. I'm just saying that, like, I mean, if you take what 3 of those goals were against Sheffield,
Oh,
an already relegated Sheffield. Several of those goals were against teams that were already relegated or at the very bottom of the league. You know,
yeah, but if you're going to take
and
away from his goals, then you have to say, okay, well, Saka didn't score anything against Sheffield. You know, I mean, like,
no, but he created against Chelsea. He had a great game against that Chelsea team. Like, that's what I'm saying is, like, Pepe was playing the whole season, right?
yeah,
On and off when he wasn't getting red cards. Uh, and him coming in and out, I didn't feel affected the team greatly. And this is, I mean, it's a hard to,
I don't
because
think. I
I'm not
think
saying
the
Pepe.
team was better though when Pepe was playing well. I mean, that's just it's not like
The
it
team was
was.
better when Saka was playing well. Like, and as I say, I don't like, I'm maybe I'm just reading Saka wrong, but I never pegged him as a goal scoring midfielder.
I don't know what
Is
he
that
is
like what
then. Like, what? I mean, like, is he just a? What is he?
he's a
He's a
midfielder? He's a
midfielder.
passing. He's a passing, possession-based midfielder that can run up balls and help, not necessarily even get first assists. Like, you have to understand there's like second assists and creating
Sure,
passages of
sure.
play, and
But I would
and
say,
and and that sort of
yeah.
thing.
But I'd put him on the Emile Smith Rowe level. I just don't like. I don't know that he has established himself as anything yet. He's so much of a work in progress. I just don't know what he is yet.
Has Pepe established
We
himself?
know what he is. He's a goal scorer. He's going to go out and take on.
He's a goal scorer.
He's going to take on. He's going to take on teams and do and dribble through teams and find his way to the box. That we know.
I wouldn't put goal scorer as his title yet. Like, as I say, like, 7 games
16
do not
goals.
make
That's
a
like that.
season.
I mean, nobody else is on that level except for Lacazette. He is on. He's at the top level of this team. I think you're discounting him way too easily.
I think you're overcounting him way too easy. And I think
16
that's where,
goals. I mean, like, that's our
and
season.
this
We
is
don't
it.
have that many goals to hinge on this season. So that's not
I
nothing.
don't have the stats in front of me. And when the goals are scored, I think what we can say is that I do agree that Pepe has shown that he is coming into being a great
Mm-hmm.
player, and I think if he can hold this form that he had for the last part of the season into next season, I think it's going to be great. And also, Saka was instrumental in saving the season, and I as well am excited to see him progress to the next season. Are those fair statements to say?
Yes.
And Tierney's an awesome player.
Tierney gets the honorable mention in all conversations about player of the season.
I mean, I know we're running a little bit long. Do we have time for who we want to kick out? I think it's going to be a quick conversation because it was pretty unanimous.
I I fully agree with this decision here, and that was Willian with the win or the loss, as you might put it.
Can you make any argument for keeping him?
No, no,
Silence.
I can't think of anything. And even Charles Allison mentioned that you know he nobody's going to pay the money to take Willian off our hands. I beg to differ because MLS is stupid, and they will spend money on him just to get
Oh,
butts and seats.
oh, good God! I could totally see like Chicago, Columbus. Who else? Colorado.
Sure.
I could totally see one of those teams. Well, I mean, Colorado's owned by the Cronkies, right?
Yeah, just shuffle them
That could
around.
be. Oh God, that'd be amazing to see how bad he is in the MLS too.
He'd
Like,
probably
I don't.
kill it. I mean, like it's right at his pace. I think his top speed is
That's
probably as
true.
fast as anybody in this league. I don't. I mean, I think the defenders that he would be going up against, he could probably make a meal of.
Yeah.
It'd be a second coming.
So Cronkies send William to Colorado, and
Yeah.
I won't
Could you
wonder how that
imagine?
transfer
That
moves.
doesn't sound that
Yeah,
bad. It
yeah,
sounds
you
like
get like for like.
paradise.
Yeah.
I'm trying to talk this up so that if William happens to hear this, he thinks it's a good idea as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Charles Allison put out a another name, which I think is a name near and dear to your heart, which is Bellerin.
Yeah.
He would say he would get rid of Bellerin. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think his days are done, unfortunately. Um, and I think if you're looking at the structure of the team, you've got positions of need, and if you've got a player that doesn't want to be here and can get you some money, then it's time. And I think that's all there is to it at this point. We have to be ruthless, as Arteta said, and um, Bellerin just has not been in the picture this season. And when he hasn't looked like himself, and that might be up to him not wanting to be at Arsenal anymore, or just needing a new challenge, whatever it is. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he still has gas in the tank, just maybe not for this team, and I'm okay with that. I just think it's not fun to watch him play poorly when I know that he's better than that. So I would much rather see him go somewhere else and have a good career than try to hold on to him. Um, and I don't think at this point Arsenal need to. I mean, I think that's a position that they can improve on. But worst case scenario, I think you can make a run at the next season with a contingent of, or a group of Chambers, Cedric, and maybe Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and call that good, and focus your efforts elsewhere as far as the other positions, and put that Bellerin money to good use, assuming that there's some money to be spent out there.
Yeah, I may agree, and we're gonna have a whole lot of time to talk about transfers, but it's just like for me, there are very few players that are on the not transferable list on the team, and Bellerin for me is not on that list. Like I like him, and I've always had a soft spot for him. I like his off-field personality. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's actually a really good person. Like if you follow him off field, he's like very involved in different things, like the environment and things like that. Plus, he's very fashionable. Like he's just he's a fun, good person.
Mm-hmm.
And I always hate to be callous about those type of people, but yeah, if the offer is right, I think it could be a good time to move on with him.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough transfer window because you say if the offer's right, and I think our valuation of players is going to be far away from what people are willing to spend right now in this market. So we're going to have to kind of take what we can get, because we can't wait until their numbers come, or until their prices go back up. At this point, we got to cut our losses and try to reinvest in players to fill those gaps in the team. And I think anybody who's on the edge, if the right offer comes in, we got to take it, because um, there's not a ton of players we're going to get a lot of money for on this team. Anybody of quality we're going to want to hold on to, and anybody who's on the fringe, um, we'll have to just hope that any offers come in, not just the right offer.
Definitely.
All right, we've got one more question, and we can probably just hit it pretty quickly because, to be honest, there's not a whole lot to talk about with this question, which is interesting. So Joe Robinson writes in and says, which Arsenal players do you think were unlucky not to make their national teams for the Euros? The England squad in particular seems very competitive this year. So Tim, you've got those lineups pulled up in front of you. Tell me what's the deal with the Euros this year?
Well, I mean, I think the if you want the quick answer, and you can skip like 20 seconds of me talking is that no, I think who was there was expected. I mean, you have Leno, Tierney, Saka, Xhaka, and I am missing one. Why am I forgetting the?
I think that was just the four.
No, that was the four. Yeah, so that was the four. I think the only person you could say maybe was like Smith Rowe, but again, I'm not a huge expert on the English national team. It's not the team I follow.
They're so deep. I think he'd have a tough time breaking in at this point.
Exactly. And, and other shouts are like, I mean, I don't think Lacazette's getting anywhere near the French national team, especially with Benzema getting called back in. Suarez is not going to make that Portugal team. The rest of our English players are nowhere near. Like Nketiah, Chambers, like they're not, like I love them both, but they're not getting anywhere near. Reece Nelson even. Pablo Mari is getting nowhere near the Spanish team. So yeah, the only maybe was Smith Rowe, but I would have been surprised if he got picked. So yeah.
And we have a lot of African and South American players at the moment as well. So I think that also plays a part in the lack of Euro players from our team. Like there's just we're a little more continental than just Europe. So
yeah, and it's a couple other teams that didn't make it. Like I guess Odegaard, like technically is not our player, and Norway didn't make it. But yeah, so it's the simple answer is not really. I was excited, or I'm happy for Saka to make the team because I'm sure it's good for him and it's good for motivation. The other side of me is I would kind of rather that he had like a nice off season, a couple months to rest, as opposed to playing in international. But I don't think he's going to be playing a ton of games, so it might be good for him to keep sharp. So
yeah, I think it's great exposure, and like I think those, we would talk about the young players needing big game experience. I think that even just being there and going through the preparation and seeing what other players are doing, just being around that level of player can only help him level up his career a bit and make it, when Arsenal get to a big game, less intimidating, less things he has to think about. All these little things that just help him be more comfortable in the type of player that he is, and feeling like he's worthy of that level. I think that's a huge confidence booster.
I think the other big issue is that he's going to be in the same team as Harry Kane, so he's going to get a little bit Spursiness on him that he's going to need to wash out really well.
Yeah, don't touch that Harry Kane.
Whoa. That's what she said.
Save the X-rated stuff for the very end. All right. Well, we should call it there. We're losing our minds at the end here.
That could be the Imperial IPA.
Yeah, that's what really sparked my Pepe Fury. Fuhrer. Oh, losing it. Whoa. Don't mention the Fuhrer at the end of the episode. That's never a good sign. All right. Well, with that, we should probably check out for the night. Thank you all for listening to this much of the episode. If you've made it this far, you get all the fun. Review and subscribe wherever you pick up your podcasts. If you're into the video thing and want to see us while you listen to us, YouTube is the other place you can subscribe. West of North London is the name of the podcast. If you've listened this long and didn't know that, I don't know how you missed the top of the show, but just
wow, sass now.
Just reminding you, that's the name of the podcast. You can find us under that name on YouTube, because we don't have one of those nice fancy URLs yet. But someday, if you subscribe and comment and tell other people to subscribe, we'll get one of those nice URLs, and YouTube will say, you've made it in the world. But not yet. Not yet, I say. I'm losing
Squad
it.
goals. Yeah,
I'm losing it.
We better close up. We're really out of hand.
westofnorthlondon@gmail.com is where you can send your questions. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at W of N London. Send your questions in there as well. Leave us a voicemail if you want to just talk to us and tell us your story. or,
Tell us how much you like Pepe.
send us a beer recommendation. Tell us how much you like Saka, Emile Smith Rowe. Send us anything you want to talk about. Anchor.fm/West of North London/message is where you can send us a voicemail. And we'd love to add your voice to our next episode. If you like our theme song, which you heard way back at the beginning when I said that this show is called West of North London, Bobcat is the name of the band that did that song for us. And if you want to find their other work, you can go to their website. It's bobc.at. Their album No Course to Follow is there, plus much more, so go check them out there. And I'm calling it, that is so much more than we ever should give you. I think this is our longest episode ever. So, as always,
See you at the next
we can't even do the outro right.
Yeah, this is what happens when we pass the 1.5 hour mark.
It all falls apart. All right, bye.
Bye.